Raider Nation, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy Sanjit back at it with another video. Please confirm that you guys can hear me, man. I'm back home. Just got back the past couple of days. If you guys haven't noticed, I have not been home, but I watched the Raiders game at home today, so I hope you guys can all hear me. What a game, man! What a crazy game! I really thought the Raiders were about to win, and we're gonna discuss this game plus more. I really want to get into what I felt about this game, some of the non-calls, right? Like let's be honest, man. This Raiders offensive line played really terribly, man. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate with the offensive line played the way they played because that offensive line right there, that play cost us this game. Like there's literally nothing else that could be said besides the fact that that O line lost us the game. Now, remember, think about this. Remember, at the beginning of this year, or I should say before the season started, the offseason, the talks was that the Raiders got rid of their offensive linemen. Rodney Hudson, Gabe Jackson, Trent Brown. You trade these guys away. The offensive line, get rid of these guys. And what happens when you get rid of the offensive line? It could bite you, man, and it really bit us today. And here's the thing: like we saw this throughout the season. Like there were times, different games. The first time we played the Chargers, the Bears game, a couple other games, the offensive line really did a bad job, and it almost seems like we were calling for it. Let's get some veterans out there. Get Jermaine Illuminor out there, right? He's a veteran, 7-8 year a player in the league. Get him out there, and maybe Leather will be a little bit more comfortable with him next to him. We decided not to, man. And you got Alex Leatherwood with multiple penalties today. John Simpson had a hold. Andre James had a hold. Brandon Parker had a hold. It was just a really bad game today. Now, I see some people saying the Raiders need to fire Tom Cable. I don't really know what that's going to do for the Raiders. I think the Raiders need to do more than just fire Tom Cable. I think the Raiders need to bring in a brand new coaching staff. Let's be honest. It was fun while it lasted, right? Like straight up, it was fun while it lasted. It was fun being able to switch out John Gruden and have Bisaccia come in, go 7-5, get us into the playoffs. But we won our last 4 games by a combined 12 points. That just was not realistic. We were not going to win a ton of football games that way. At the same time, the game was much closer than I actually thought, 19-26. But we kicked way too many field goals this game. I believe we only scored 1 touchdown. And then we kicked pretty much field goals the rest of the game. Or we may have had 2 touchdowns. But we kicked a lot of field goals. And I think those field goals were ultimately one of the reasons why we lost. And you got to give a big shout out to the defense. 26 points that the defense gave up. But you can argue that 6 of those points came, one off of Derek Carr's fumble. The second came from the one drive that we were kind of close to the goal line. We didn't do anything on that play. Peyton Barber with the worst play that I've ever seen. At the worst possible time, right? A playoff game, he has the worst play I've ever seen. So when you look at those plays, you look at those 2 drives, right? We don't do anything after that Peyton Barber play, right? Because let's face it, right? Some offenses, some offensive coordinators, some quarterbacks, some of these top tier guys bail their team out. They don't go 3 and out and punt the football and then give the opposing team the ball at the 45-yard line, right? You only need 45 more yards. Now, obviously, the defense still held up on that drive as well as the Derek Carr fumble, and we only gave up 6 points. 26 total points is what the Bengals scored. 6 came because the offense, in my opinion anyways. 20 points is what the defense gave up. Wasn't bad. And let's be honest, when we really needed a stop at the end of the game, the defense showed up, man, and we got that stop. Now, obviously, it is unfortunate that the Raiders lost this game. We got the first Super Chat of the day by my man, Nintendo Nut. Now, if you guys want to be featured on the channel, Super Chats is the best way to be featured. I'm going to get into this. I don't know how long I'll go here, but I definitely want to answer all you guys' questions. And we'll have some off-season talk a little bit later on today, man. I really want to get into it. I guess before we get into the Super Chat, Derek Carr had a really good game today. I know he didn't end up getting the score when we needed it, when it mattered at the end, but he still had a really good game, right? Especially when you look at the circumstances, you look at what the offensive line did to really negate some production. Like we had some, I would argue we had at least 50 to 60 yards offensively on plays that the offensive line or whoever held, right? It really negated a lot of our plays. That too. We got down to, I believe, the 1 or 2 yard line on a Josh Jacobs run that a John Simpson hold brought back. That was probably the difference in this game, in my opinion. Nintendo Nut said the D had like 1 sack on the most sacked quarterback in the league. O-line is a dumpster fire full of penalties and 0 effort. We are in the embarrassment of the NFL. See y'all next year for one more of the same. I hear your frustration, brother. I really hear your frustration. But I do want to say this, right? Like, our team is not in a bad spot. Like, we still made the playoffs, and 14 teams make the playoffs. That means 18 teams go home. We weren't one of the 18 losing teams. We're one of the winning teams this year. I know, you can kind of say that we kind of got lucky towards the end of the year, barely slipped into the playoffs, but we still made the playoffs. And we saw what Derek Carr can do in the playoffs, right? He did a pretty good job. Obviously, Derek Carr still has a year on his contract, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But I like what I saw from the guy today, man. He really stepped up. I think the Raiders need to do some things, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. I appreciate the super chat, and I do totally agree with you on the defensive line. Think about this today. The Raiders literally had 5 quarterback hits as well as 2 sacks in the entire game. 1 came from Quentin Jefferson, 1 came from Max Crosby. 7 times we're able to basically touch the quarterback. The quarterback dropped back almost 40 times this game. We only touched him 7 times. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Raiders lose this game. In the first half, I don't think we stopped them without them scoring. I think they pretty much scored points on every single one of their drives. And when we really needed it, man, we weren't able to stop Jamar Chase. And I think that kind of impacted us a little bit. But thank you for the super chat, brother. I really, really appreciate it. Cruise Control with the next super chat said this team wasn't ready. The O-line sucked. Wide receivers sucked. Horrible game management. This team needs a new GM, new coaching staff. Effing pissed. I agree, man. The coaching staff has to be changed out. I don't care how much success Gus Bradley had with the defense. I don't care how much success Rich Bisaccia has had. Think about this. Interim coaches that I can think of on the top of my head that have became head coaches have never really panned out, right? You look at Tom Cable for the Raiders at one point. I think it was Mike Cornell for or Coach Cornell for the Browns, right? He was an interim, became their head coach, didn't work out. A couple other coaches. I don't think interim head coaches that turn into head coaches oftentimes work out, and I think it would be a mistake for the Raiders to go forward with Bisaccia. I like Bisaccia. He did a good job, but he's not a head coach. He's not a long-term head coach that has shown that this guy could build a team. And I don't want to go into next year or the year after with a guy that hasn't proven that he could build a roster. I want a guy that's proven it. I want a guy that's taken his team to a Super Bowl or to the playoffs or who has had success. There's at least 2 coaches out there right now in Jim Harbaugh, who we don't know if he'll come into the NFL, as well as Brian Flores, that Mark Davis needs to go out and go get. In terms of general manager, there's some general managers out there. I do like Mike Mayock still, to be 100% honest with you guys, but we'll obviously see what kind of happens there. I really appreciate the super chat. John Salinas said the O-line is young and now has experience. Leave it and build on it. Cable is underrated for what he had. It's time to move on from Carr. This was his game. I'm not going to disagree with a lot of what you said here because I do think that the offense line is young, but we knew that coming into the season. Like, let's not be shocked, right? Let's not pretend like we're shocked and the O-line underperformed or anything like that. The O-line is what the O-line is. It's young, it's inexperienced, and it needs to grow and get better. Like, think about this. Our left tackle is the veteran of that offensive line. He's still on his rookie contract, right? Technically speaking, Colton Miller's in his 4th year this season. He's on his rookie contract still. Brandon Parker, 4th year. He may not be here next year, right? He's not under contract. 4th year is his final year with the Raiders. He was our right tackle. Our left guard's a 2nd-year player. Our center's a 3rd-year player. And our right guard is a 1st-year player. That offensive line is very inexperienced. I do think we need to keep that offensive line in place, and I think we are, right? I'm pretty confident that 3 of the 5 guys will be returning next year and starting. That's Colton Miller, Andre James, and Alex Leatherwood. Now, I don't know if Leatherwood's a right guard or a right tackle. We'll obviously find out next season or as the offseason comes around. In terms of keeping Tom Cable, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but if the Raiders bring in a new coaching staff, Tom Cable will likely be gone. Now, he could potentially be brought back, but I think some of the moves that Tom Cable made this season, you know, I'll be honest with you guys. I talk to players. I talk to offensive linemen. I talk to guys that are on the Raiders. Some of these guys literally text with me, and they'll tell me some of the things that are kind of going on within the Raiders organization. And from what I know, Tom Cable had a huge disagreement with some of the other coaches on who to keep in on the offensive line. Some people were saying get rid of Brandon Parker's. He was like, he wants to keep Brandon Parker. It's his guy. And there was a huge, I don't know what you want to call it, but there was an issue there, right? The other coaches were telling Tom Cable to switch out the right tackles. He's not getting it done. And Tom Cable wanted to roll forward with him. Some people were saying to potentially bench Alex Leatherwood, although I think that would be the wrong decision. Some coaches were calling for those things, and Tom Cable said he did not want to do that. And some of those things, in my opinion, did lead to the Raiders ultimately failing. Alex Leatherwood and Brandon Parker had, I believe, 4 penalties combined today, or maybe it was 3, but there were costly penalties. John Simpson has been a terrible football player the entire season. He doesn't process the game well. He doesn't see blitzes. He doesn't see things correctly. And today, on probably the in my opinion, it was the game-changing play. Every other penalty, every other, whatever happened, you could have thrown it to the side. Josh Jacobs ran the ball to the 1-yard line. If John Simpson doesn't hold on that play, we're about to score a touchdown, and we'd only be down by 3 points at that point. But because of that hold and the fact that now it's like 3rd and 20, we had to kick the field goal. That's a 7-point game now, right? Those type of things, in my opinion, really make a big impact. With that being said, I don't know what the Raiders are going to do with the coaching staff, to be honest with you guys, but I think at the end of the day, the Raiders need to figure it out, right? Rather it's Mike Mayock needs to figure it out, rather it's Mark Davis needs to figure it out. It needs to be figured out because I don't know if Derek Carr is the quarterback. And I believe it was Ian Rappaport reported it earlier today that basically Derek Carr isn't locked in as their quarterback and that it'll really come down to who the next coach is. Derek Carr did a pretty good job today, right? I would say this about Derek Carr. Derek Carr is a quarterback that you need everything right around him. But a lot of quarterbacks are like that in the league, right? And a lot of quarterbacks in this league win that way. I don't know how many of those win Super Bowls that way, right? I feel like the quarterbacks that win Super Bowls are quarterbacks that are top tier quarterbacks. And I don't know if the Raiders will ever be able to build that type of roster around Derek Carr. Now, obviously, it'll still come down to who the coach is. And I think that coach is going to make the decision, right? So we'll obviously find out what happens there. I appreciate the super chat, John. I really do. Your mom left a $2 super chat, said Kaka or Kaka, I'm not sure what that is, but I appreciate the super chat. Cole GT said, we shot ourselves in the foot constantly. Bengals played a clean game. We could have won this game if we didn't make all those mental mistakes. Does anyone disagree with this comment? Now, before I give you guys my response, man, hit that thumbs up button if you guys could. I'd really, really appreciate it. At the same time, just a quick update with the channel. As you guys know, when the offseason comes around, a lot of what kind of happens is going to be rumors, reports. Raiders will hire people, fire people, we'll get some new coaches, we'll get some new players brought in. So this channel will focus in on a lot of that. At the same time, I will be doing a lot of film studies. One of the things that I want to do is I kind of want to take some of the guys that struggled early on and kind of compare how they played early on to a little bit later on. One of the guys I want to talk about a little bit is Derek Carr. Derek Carr in the past, I'd say this game plus the past 3 or 4 games, played like a different quarterback. And I kind of want to figure out why that was. So that'll be a film study probably in the next month or so. It'll be out there. But Koji said that we shot ourselves in the foot. Bengals played a clean game. We could have won this game if we didn't make all those mental mistakes. And there's nothing that you can say isn't true there. If you guys think about this for a second, the Raiders were 8 of 18 on third downs. The Bengals were 5 of 12. So it's really not that big of a difference. But what I would say is this. There were situations when the Raiders were in 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, I believe, a couple times, and the Raiders were not able to get off the field. And I think ultimately that was the difference in this game. If you're able to get off the field on third downs, you save points. And let's not even talk about the blown call by the referees, right? The fact that the referees blew the whistle, the replay that was shown, in my opinion, it seemed like the audio had changed in the replay than the audio when you're watching the game live, because I could have sworn that the whistle was blown well before Joe Burrow actually released the football. At least in my opinion, that's what it was. And either way, Trayvon Merrick didn't even attempt to swat the ball because he thought he heard the whistle, which he technically did. They should have redone that down no matter what, because at the end of the day, if you blow the whistle, you blow the whistle. All right. And I think between that play, Derek Carr's fumble, I think was a huge play, right? A sack right there, and punt the football is different because you may get a stop, right? They might not necessarily get a field goal. You take those plays, you take a couple of our other mental mistakes, false starts, penalties. You take some of those plays at the same time. It wasn't like the Bengals had like zero penalties, right? I believe penalty wise, both teams had 7 penalties, and the Bengals actually had more yards given up on penalties. The Bengals gave up 56, the Raiders gave up 46, although I think technically the Raiders gave up penalties. A lot of their penalties were holds, which are 10-yard penalties. You go backwards, and I don't think they technically count those. But either way, man, mental mistakes, man, mental mistakes. This roster is going to get better, right? It's a newly constructed roster, and the fact that we're still able to make the playoffs with a roster that was newly constructed, in my opinion, it's kind of interesting, man. These guys are going to get better as the season kind of goes on here. Let's get to the next super chat. Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. The next one comes from Adrian. He said, "We were being written off before the first half even ended by our own fans. As even I'm convinced these fans would complain even after a Super Bowl win." I know I wouldn't complain if the Raiders won a Super Bowl. I'd be pumped up, man. I'd be celebrating. But I hear what you're saying, because even last week playing the Chargers, I almost felt like the flow of that game was from like the broadcast crew was, oh, the Chargers are great. The Chargers are going to do this. The Chargers are going to do that. And the Chargers are going to win. And Justin Herbert's this, right? I felt like that was the talks throughout the entire game. Even coming into this Bengals game, I did not see any person that was not an ex-Raider or played for the Raiders, right? In terms of analysts, I did not see any of these experts pick the Raiders to win. And a lot of them were saying the Raiders are going to get blown out, right? I saw some people saying that the Bengals are going to put up almost 40 points. I think it was like 36 plus points. 5 people on ESPN all said they'd score 36 plus points. And that was not the case, right? The Bengals scored 26. That too, the Bengals scored 6 points in the second half. 6 points in the second half is what the Bengals scored. Obviously, the Raiders only scored 6 points as well. And, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, man, I think the Raiders did a great job this season. You can't go through what the Raiders went through, losing Coach Gruden, losing Henry Ruggs, cutting your first round pick technically we released Henry Ruggs as well, but then releasing Damon Arnett. You can't go through all of those situations and expect to win a Super Bowl, right? Or expect to win. Some teams don't even make the playoffs, right? I think we're the first team in like 60 years to be able to do that. But the fact that we're still able to do that, in my opinion, with a roster that was newly constructed, like think about it. How many of the players that started for the Raiders this year started for us last year, right? On the top of my head, like you can count all just the new guys that started, right? Like Zay Jones didn't start last year for the Raiders, nor did the new fullback we brought in, although he didn't play a ton. And we moved Darren Waller to wide receiver and started Foster Moreau, so technically he was a new starter. You bring in basically a brand new offensive line, right? Brandon Parker's a new starter, Alex Leatherwood, Andre James, John Simpson. 4 guys are new starters, basically. And then on the defense side of the ball, you have Divine Diablo, Denzel Perryman, Quinton Jefferson, Solomon Thomas, and Nick Ngakwe. You look at basically our entire secondary is brand new guys. If this roster can stay together, I think the Raiders will be pretty good next year. Now, obviously, I don't know if the coaching staff would stay the same. I almost feel like the coaching staff, if it changes, some of these players will not be brought back, right? I also think guys that were on 1-year contracts, the Casey Haywards and stuff like that, I think would not be brought back. Obviously, we'll find out, right? The offseason starting, right? If the Raiders are going to move on from Rich Bisaccia, if they're going to hire Rich Bisaccia, we're going to know within the next 2 weeks. Like we will know who the Raiders or what the Raiders plan to do. I appreciate the super chat. The next one comes from Robert. Again, if you guys want to be featured on the channel, man, leave a super chat. It supports the channel. As you guys know, film breakdowns that I do and some of my other videos as well, don't get monetized, right? YouTube doesn't allow me to monetize those. The NFL comes and says, hey, you're using our footage, rightfully so. But if you guys leave super chats, it supports the channel, right? Supports the channel, right? And I always appreciate it. Robert said that I disagree. We could have used Mullen, Abram, Good, Drake, McCoy, and Morrow. What we fought in blaming this loss on injuries. Well fought in blaming this. Yeah, man. I understand what you're saying, right? But you can also make the same argument for the Bengals, for the Chargers, for the Browns, for the Colts. Every team goes through injuries, right? And I'm not saying that the Raiders just happen to have more injuries because maybe we did, right? But like Jared McCoy, we haven't had him from the beginning of the year. Same with basically Trayvon Mullen came back and played in the game. Morrow we haven't had, right? And then Abram, I think, was kind of the one that hurt us a little bit. Same with Denzel Goodard. We haven't had these guys in a while, but I do agree with you in the sense that having these guys would have helped the Raiders, especially against the Bengals, man, in the playoffs. You have a little bit more experience with some of these guys. Jared McCoy has played in the playoffs, right? Jonathan Abram, although he hasn't played in the playoffs, has been around for a number of years. It is what it is, man. In my opinion, would I say this is a successful season for the Raiders? Absolutely. I would say this was a absolutely successful season for the Raiders, and I think this is something to build on. You go into next season, you bring in a couple more guys, and that too, right? Like our offense line wasn't that terrible, right? Like, yeah, they made some mental mistakes, but you're not going to get worse than what we just had. Like, you can really only improve going into next season, and I look forward to seeing that. I look forward to seeing the Raiders improve next year. Dante Deal said, are you still going to be dropping daily videos? I love that. Also, I say we hire Harbaugh and John Dorsey. Carr had his best game in a while, even though we lost. I will still be dropping videos daily, or at least I will try to. I think about 5 videos a week for sure. You can lock that in. But I agree, man. If Harbaugh's there, even John Dorsey, I know some people don't like John Dorsey. Some people said, he failed in certain roles. But John Dorsey has, he drafted Patrick Mahomes at the end of the day, right? And that too, Patrick Mahomes wasn't the number 1 overall pick or the number 2, 3, 4, 5. He wasn't even a top 10 pick, or at least I don't believe he was. I believe he was like 11 or 12 or something like that. Patrick Mahomes, John Dorsey saw him and drafted him, right? And you can even go to the Cleveland Browns and say, kind of did a pretty good job there constructing a roster. Now, I do like Mike Mayock, don't get me wrong, but you can't miss on guys like Cleveland Farrell, David Arnett, and Henry Ruggs, and even Alex Leatherwood looks disappointing, right? And I'm totally for development, but I don't know if Alex Leatherwood was going to develop. Like, I just don't see it in his game. I think he's never going to be a superstar offensive lineman. I think Tevin Jenkins may be a superstar offensive lineman. I think some other guys, Samuel Cosme has that superstar potential, but I don't think Alex Leatherwood has it, right? And Alex Leatherwood went before both of those guys. So that's a Mike Mayock pick. I know some people are going to blame John Gruden, but, unless Mike Mayock puts it out there, I blame Mike Mayock. And Mike Mayock will never put it out there, right? So, at the end of the day, I think the Raiders should move on from Mike Mayock, right? I really think there's general managers out there that are maybe more qualified than Mike Mayock. They may be able to handle these situations a little bit better. Again, I wouldn't be mad with Mike Mayock going forward. I think we can give him one more draft class. But what's going to happen is when next year starts and the season continues, everyone's going to continue to talk about the fact that Clelin Ferrell's a bust. Clelin Ferrell is the biggest bust since probably Solomon Thomas, right? Or I don't know who else was picked, top 5, but Clelin Ferrell's a big time bust, and you can't make those type of picks and then expect to continue having your job, right? And again, I know Mike Mayock, John Gruden, the relationship was a bit different. John Gruden was kind of responsible for everything. But either way, man, I appreciate the super chat. Adrian said, would you have liked to play Mariota a little bit more? I would love to play Mariota. And I've said this before that I think the Raiders should have at least a certain point put Mariota into the game and let him run a couple drives. Let him actually not just run the read option. But the fact that the Raiders didn't do that, Mariota's not going to re-sign with the Raiders, which is okay, right? Because I think Derek Carr still has a 1-year contract. If the Raiders did want to move on from Derek Carr, they have, every single opportunity to do that after next season. Remember, Jimmy Garoppolo got the San Francisco 49ers into the playoffs. I think the Niners started off like 3-7, and the Niners are in the playoffs now. And that's because Jimmy Garoppolo got them there, right? And they're still moving on from Garoppolo. Garoppolo won't be there next year with the Niners. Although I think they should probably revisit that a little bit. But, teams have good quarterbacks, and sometimes they move on from those good quarterbacks to get a potential better option, right? The Eagles moved on from Carson Wentz, and they tried getting a better option. And it's not like those guys were, 38 years old and they're about to retire. They're like 5-6 years into the league. So sometimes to get the better option, I think you should potentially move on. I don't know if the Raiders will have that ability to have a better option than Derek Carr. So I don't know what they're going to do. But if there is a better option, I think you go for it, right? I'm sure most people would agree that Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson are all better options than Derek Carr, or at least they're better quarterbacks than Derek Carr. But if you're going to have to settle for I don't know. If you have to settle for a quarterback that isn't better than Derek, then that would be the wrong decision, right? Even if you have to pay Derek $35 million, you can sign him for a 2-year contract and then figure something out down the line, right? You don't have to sign him to a 5-year extension. Either way, I would have personally loved to see Mariota play a little bit more. But you also got to keep in mind, Mark Davis has a business to run, right? Mark Davis understands that if you take out Derek Carr and you put in Marcus Mariota, and let's say Marcus has success, what's happened now is every team out there knows that the Raiders will not continue with Derek Carr because Marcus had success. So Derek Carr's trade value drops. Let's say Marcus struggles. Well, now Derek Carr is going to say, well, I would have signed for 35, but now I want 50 million, right? So there's reasons why Mark Davis wouldn't necessarily want to play Marcus Mariota, why he would pressure Rich Bisaccia and Mike Mayock into not going that route, right? But I appreciate the super chat. Nintendo Nut said Raiders fans are burnt out because we've been living through 20 years of mediocrity. I was born in 1994, and I don't know if I'll ever get to see my team win a Super Bowl. I hear you, man. I really do, because I was born in 1993. And I pretty much have been watching the Raiders a little less than 20 years. This was this was literally the most important game I've ever witnessed, right, in my lifetime. And I'm 28 years old today. And for the Raiders, if you think about that, how bad of a franchise do you have to be? And to make it worse, I know a lot of you guys aren't Sacramento Kings fans, but I'm a Sacramento Kings fan. So not only do I have to struggle with the Raiders, but I have to struggle with the Kings. If you're a Raiders fan, and let's say you're a fan of the Lakers, at least you get some winning, man. I don't get either, but I really do hope the Raiders can get it turned around, because I really do think this roster is a pretty good roster. When you look at the 2016 roster, a lot of our winning, in my opinion, came because we're able to force turnovers, and a lot of that came from Khalil Mack. But that's not the correct way to build, in my opinion, right? I think you need to have a good roster in general. You have to have a good secondary. You have to have good linebackers, and then you need that Khalil Mack type of player, right? Khalil Mack works when you have good everything, or at least decent everything else. Think about this. The Raiders didn't force many turnovers this year, but our defense was still pretty good. When we needed stops, they got stops, right? Against the Broncos, Derek Carr threw an interception, or maybe that was against the Browns. And then the defense had to get that stop. And had we not gotten that stop, we would not have won. The Colts game, the defense got the stop. The Chargers, right? The defense got the stop, or at least in overtime, we're able to contain them to only a field goal. I would argue that if we get one or two guys that can start forcing turnovers, and then Trayvon Merrick takes that next step, Nate Hobbs takes that next step, let's say we force 22 turnovers next year, and look at where our team could potentially be. I don't know how many turnovers we forced this year, but I'm going to assume it was like 10, plus minus 2 or 3. Imagine forcing twice as many turnovers, how much better we would be, right? I think the Raiders have a lot going for themselves. You look at the offensive line, it's young. It's going to stay together, hopefully, for the next 5 to 10 years. And hopefully the guys keep getting better. I think one of the things the Raiders have to do on the offensive line, I think Andre James has to get way better. And I'm not saying he's a bad football player, but he needs to get bigger. He needs to get fatter. He needs to get stronger. I was watching the All-22 tape. Linval Joseph bullied Andre James, at least in the first half. He flat out bullied him. He was throwing him around. Rightfully so. Linval Joseph was at one point a superstar defensive tackle, and he still has a lot of those good things, even in his older age. But Andre James has to get way better, because I think our center left tackle and right tackle have to be good. And right now, the Raiders only have a left tackle that's really good. Center's okay. Right tackle's, I think, above okay. I appreciate the super chat. I think we have a lot more success coming, man. I really do. George said, I'm very proud of this Raiders team. Carr needs to stay, and we need to build discipline for next year. A bunch of penalties. That's the thing, man. Our offense line is only going to get better. We're not going to get worse. And we had way too many penalties on the offense side of the ball. Even then, imagine if you had Trayvon Mullen out there as opposed to Brandon Faison. All right. How many times do we need to stop? Second and long, third and long, and then Joe Burrow just throws it to Brandon Faison side, and Chase or T. Higgins, whoever it was, would just catch the ball, right? And again, I think those are some of the small things, but I'm very proud of this Raiders team, man. They really put it together this season. In my opinion, right, I think the Raiders this season played so much better than they have over the past 4 to 5 years. The roster's better. The offensive line, in my opinion, could be better, but I think this is the most potential they've had, right? You could argue that our offensive line last year and the year before were on a downwards trend. They were not going up, right? They're coming down, at least in my opinion. Cruise Control said, after those big runs from 28, they should have threw the ball instead of get stuff. They go to the tail too much at the point, throw to run. To that point to run. I agree, man. Josh Jacobs really had a good game today. Statistically, let me look at his stats really quickly. Statistically, Josh Jacobs had 13 carries for 83 yards, an average of 6.4 yards per attempt. And I think that was a big mistake for the Raiders not to pound the ball more. And I know at some point we couldn't, especially that penalty by John Simpson. But we need to run the ball more with Josh Jacobs. He got hot these past 4 or 5 games. Like, he was putting up 100 yards in each of those games. And again, I really believe Josh Jacobs has so much potential. But I think we need to throw the football first before we run the football, right? I don't think we need to build to be a run first team. It's not going to work. It's not 1998 anymore. This is 2022, 2021, 2022 that we're about to go into. This is no longer that old style of football. We have to throw to run, and we need some weapons, man. Jamar Chase is a difference maker. Big difference maker. But even T. Higgins is a pretty good football player. Even Tyler Boyd is a pretty good football player. The Raiders have to get some playmakers on the offense side of the ball. Do we get rid of Darren Waller? That's going to be the question. That's going to be the $1 million question going into this offseason. Darren Waller, in my opinion, has not shown up. And he had a pretty good game today. 7 catches, 76 yards. But there were also some plays where he was targeted, thrown to, and, in my opinion, it could have been better. He really just caught the ball and kind of got tackled. But I appreciate the super chat, man. I really do. Michael James said, I'm proud of our team. We're not that far away from being a contender. I couldn't agree more. I really appreciate the super chat. We're right there. It's not that far for the Raiders to become that contender. But if you guys can hit that thumbs up button, I'd really, really, really appreciate it. Henny Hen said, thanks for all you do with all the edits and breakdowns, Raider Nation for life. I really appreciate that, man. People don't realize this. I spend every single day of my life covering the Raiders, man. Rather it's looking for news, looking for that story, looking to see what's going on, texting with players back and forth. I do so much just to cover the Raiders. There's so much more than the 10 minutes you guys might watch me every day, right? Don't think just because you see me for 10 minutes doesn't mean I'm not working 20 hours every day or 15 hours, whatever it is, right? Every single day, trying to, do some work regarding Raiders, right? I appreciate it. I really, really do. Tony Tenezdo, I apologize if I said that wrong, said, check out the Bengals' first touchdown. The tight end didn't complete the catch. He dropped it before it hit the ground. I don't know what the hell happened, man. I saw the same exact thing. And again, I don't see how that was a catch, but then Hunter Renfro's pass, the one he caught, wasn't a catch. Because Hunter Renfro took 2 steps, right? He had the ball and he took 2 steps. And then the ball got punched out. He didn't take a third, but he took 2 steps. But yet the tight end somehow completed the catch. And I'm surprised they didn't take an extended look at it, right? Or I didn't hear anyone say, oh, it was confirmed or anything like that. Although I'm going to just make that assumption it was a confirmed touchdown. To me, that looked like an incomplete pass, man. What do you guys think about that? It really looked like an incomplete pass to me. We had some mental mistakes for sure. But the Bengals had some lucky plays. That play, in my opinion, was one of them. Of course, the blown call, right? The whistle was blown. They scored a touchdown. Trayvon Merrick didn't try to swat the ball because he heard the whistle. Sometimes guys will catch the ball, and as they're bringing the ball down, guys will punch the ball out or swat at the ball. I'm sure Trayvon Merrick would have at least attempted something had he not heard the whistle. In my opinion, that's a big blow right there. Right? Those are two plays that kind of shifted the game a little bit. And then you look at the Hunter Renfrow play because we punted the ball right after that, right? So, you look at some of these plays and the fact that the Raiders still had the opportunity, that too, I think Derek Carr made a big mistake. 35 seconds left. We get down to first and goal. I don't see the need to spike the ball. I'm not sure why the Raiders spiked the ball, but for whatever reason, Derek Carr decided to spike the ball. I think that was the wrong play. I think he should have went up there and checked into whatever play it needed to be and take a shot. If it's an incompletion, the clock's going to stop regardless. Instead, you kind of wasted that down a little bit. At least in my opinion, that those were some of the plays that I think the Raiders kind of messed up on. George said, I hope the Raiders make big splash moves that'll benefit our team, like trading for Calvin Ridley and signing big-time talented players. I would love to have Calvin Ridley, man. And you know what's crazy is I posted this to my Twitter, and a lot of people were saying, oh, well, I don't want a quitter. I don't want a guy that quits on his team mid-season, doesn't want to play. Did he quit, or was he having some mental issues? He needed to work on his mental health. Or did he quit on his team, right? Because I think there's two different things. And I know some people are saying he quit on his team, but Calvin Ridley's still a really good, talented player. Now, obviously, I think whatever he's going to get paid is going to make a difference. I believe he's in his 4th or 5th year, and I don't know if the Falcons have already extended him. They may have, but sometimes wide receivers get extended, and then teams trade them even after they get extended. I think the Raiders need to find themselves a wide receiver. I know some people have mentioned Michael Gallup, although he tore his ACL, and I think that's going to hurt his value a little bit. Some people have obviously mentioned Davante Adams, although the reports now are that Aaron Rodgers is going to stay with Green Bay, and Davante Adams is also going to stay there. But I really think the Raiders need to go out and get themselves a big-name wide receiver. And I wouldn't be mad at drafting someone, right? There's some good wide receivers coming out this year. Let me know what you guys think, man. Do the Raiders need to draft a wide receiver? Do they need to trade for a wide receiver or even just attempt to sign a wide receiver? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Larry Mallet said, Rich had a great season, but so many little issues. Should not be our head coach. I agree. Because of some of these issues that he had, I agree. I don't think he should be the Raiders head coach going forward. And there were also some bad calls, in my opinion, right, by Rich Bisaccia. Some questionable decision making by Rich Bisaccia. It is what it is. The Raiders obviously lost this game, but I think there are so many positives in this play, and I really think that for the Raiders going forward, they need to fix. First they need to figure out who their GM is going to be. Is it going to be Rich Bisaccia? Is it not? And if it is Rich Bisaccia, who's going to be your head coach? Or is it going to be Mike Mayock, or is it going to be Rich Bisaccia as your head coach? You really need to figure out those things first, because that will allow you to figure out who your head coach is, who your coaching staff is going to be, and who's your defensive coordinator going to be. If you let Gus Bradley leave, is Casey Hayward going to come back? Denzel Perryman, and I'm okay with Denzel Perryman not being here. It really does not impact me at all. I think he's a good tackler, but that's kind of where it stops. I think he may fit a good system when you're asking him to just do one thing over and over and over again. But when it comes to him having to do more, I don't think he can do more, right? At least in my opinion, I would not be upset if the Raiders let him go. Dirty Style says you just can't throw the ball short of the end zone on 4th down, regardless of the call. There was little to no pressure. Waller for the wheel route. I have to watch the film. I kind of wanted to not talk about it, but let's get into it, man. Derek Carr threw it short, right, of the end zone. And you can say Derek Carr threw it short. You can also say Zay Jones ran a route short of the goal line. But Zay Jones is going to run a route to where the defense allows him to run a route, right? Like if Zay Jones took 2 more steps and got into the end zone, I mean, the ball was intercepted regardless, but it would have been an easier interception. A guy would have been underneath it even more so than the guy was, right? I think Darren Waller was open, or not open, but I would have rather taken the shot to Darren Waller. The fact that Derek Carr trusts Zay Jones more than Darren Waller is kind of mind-boggling to me. it really makes me think, like, is that where the Raiders are, that Zay Jones is more trusted than our best offensive player? Not even our best receiver, not our best offensive player. Darren Waller's arguably our best overall player, right? You can make the argument for Max Crosby as well, but uh, the fact that Derek Carr didn't go to Darren Waller definitely scratched my head a little bit. Either way, man, it was such a close game, and I really wish the Raiders could have scored a touchdown. And then, what do we have went for the two? I don't know. I would have loved to see what would have happened there, but I appreciate you, man. I really do. Cruise Control said, I'm really happy about the Raiders. Been a fan since '85, seen Howie Long, Tim Brown play live. It's really tough. I hope we can fix it because this is it for number 4. I totally agree with you, man. I really agree with you. The Raiders have a lot going for themselves, but as a franchise, like, let's face it, the Raiders organization is one of the best organizations, or at least it has been when we look back to the history of the Raiders. That's not the case anymore, right? Like, we may have one of the most passionate fan bases, but over the last 20 years, 25 years, we've kind of been the laughing stock of the league, right? Us and a couple other teams. But the Raiders got to fix it. They got to turn it around. And the thing is I know Derek Carr's a good quarterback. I know Derek Carr could get it done in the right situation. But does Derek Carr, does Derek Carr make everyone around him better? I don't know, right? You can argue for it or against it, but I do think that the Raiders need to figure it out. I think getting some better players would obviously help DC. But how much is it going to help DC? And that too, like, do we need to invest more money on the defense or the offense? Because last season we had 75% of our salary cap invested in the offense, and our defense was terrible. This year we shifted that a little bit. Instead of being 75% on offense, we're only at about 58%, which means 42% of our cap is invested on the defense, which also means that where we made that shift over. But look at the offensive production. Like, we struggled to score 20 points in our last 7 weeks. We didn't score more than 20 in pretty much 5 of those last 7 games, right? Even today, right? I don't think we scored more than 20. What did we score? 19, yeah. So we didn't score more than 20 today either, right? So I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting offseason, in my opinion. I would love for the Raiders, honestly, to go into next year with Derek Carr as the quarterback. I think that would be the correct move. You don't have to extend him, right? That's a separate talk. But I think the right move would be to keep that consistency at the quarterback position. Hunter Renfrow, bring him back. Obviously, Darren Waller, Zay Jones, I think should be brought back. But I think Bryan Edwards needs a bigger role. I think Bryan Edwards needs to be our guy. I think he needs 125 targets next year. Going into year 3, I think Bryan Edwards is going to completely change his game. I really have a feeling. I think, him not playing at least 80% of snaps every single game has hindered him so far. And I think the Raiders need to get him involved more. Give Bryan Edwards the ball the way the Niners give Deebo Samuel the ball, right? Force feed Bryan Edwards. And I think Bryan Edwards is a playmaker. Like, I've seen him do some good things, right? I appreciate the Super Chat Cruise. Gio said settling for field goals instead of touchdowns was this team's Achilles the entire season. Let the Jim Harbaugh rumors begin. Appreciate your hard work. Big shout out to you, man. I agree with that. Like, that's a very interesting point that you make, because this season, the Achilles heel has been field goals instead of touchdowns, right? Like, every game this season. And if you guys can confirm, like, how many field goals did Daniel Carlson kick? Where does he rank in terms of attempts this season? He has to be like top 3, right? And as opposed to, like, how many touchdowns did the Raiders score? I'm going to assume we're in the bottom 10, right? And a lot of that is because we would drive downfield and we would settle for a field goal. Like, our red zone offense was terrible. I believe today we got into the red zone 5 times. We scored a touchdown once. So those type of things can't happen, man. You have to be able to convert. You have to be able to score. Obviously, the Raiders weren't able to do it. And I agree, man. That's kind of been the Achilles heel. The Jim Harbaugh rumors, they're going to begin, man. And I'm going to talk about Jim Harbaugh. Until Jim Harbaugh says, hey, I'm staying at Michigan, I'm going to talk about Jim Harbaugh, man. I'm going to talk about him because I think Harbaugh has done a great job. His defensive coach, the guy that he feels comfortable with, has also been fired, which means there's a chance that if Harbaugh comes back to the league, him and Fangio will reunite. Vic Fangio, Denver Broncos head coach, has been fired. So I don't know, man. It's gonna be very interesting. Robert left the next super chat. If you guys can hit that thumbs up button, I'd really appreciate it. It helps the YouTube algorithm. Um, Robert said, we need a number one wide receiver. You're not winning playoff guys. You're not winning playoff games with our one. I'm not sure what you mean there. Or you're not winning a playoff game with our guys. Kelsey was good, but once Hill came, it opened the field up. Chase killed us. I agree. 100% agree with you. Um, Tight ends are great, right? Having a great tight end, it's great. But you know why they're tight ends and they're not wide receivers? Because they're slow, right? They don't have that speed, that game-changing ability. And the thing is the Raiders don't have speed from their tight end position, and they don't have speed from their running backs. And I shouldn't say Darren Waller's not that fast. That's not what I mean. He's a fast tight end, but he's a tight end at the end of the day. He's not going to outrun anyone. Same with Josh Jacobs. Like Josh Jacobs broke a run and he wasn't able to score because he wasn't quick enough. Understandably so, but those are the types of things that could flip a game like that, right? I want to see, and the Raiders don't give up a lot of big plays in terms of like yards after the catch. We make a lot of tackles, but I've seen Travis Kelce catch a 5-yard pass and take it 35 yards to the house. I've seen, I've seen other guys. Mike Williams for the Chargers catches a 10-yard pass and takes it to the house. Jamar Chase, although he didn't do it against the Raiders, he catches it for 15 yards and takes it the distance. I need the Raiders to have that type of guy. And I know Henry Ruggs was potentially getting there with his career, but Ruggs is gone. He's no longer going to be a Raider. But the Raiders got to go get that guy. Now, is Calvin Ridley that guy? I don't think so, to be honest, guys. I don't think Michael Gallup's that guy. To be honest, I don't think Devontae Adams is that guy. I don't think any of those guys have the ability to catch a pass for 5 yards and take it the distance. In my opinion, Calvin Ridley is a possession wide receiver, right? He's a very good route runner. He'll burn anyone and get wide open for a 15-yard catch, but he's going to get tackled by that first guy. You look at some other guys that are out there, right? Devontae Adams, I don't think he's a guy that catches it for 5-10 yards and takes it the distance. But I do think that there's some guys that are coming out. I think Brian Andrews could potentially be that guy, right? Obviously, we'll find out. I'm a Brian Andrews fan, if you guys have not noticed yet. So I appreciate the super chat. The next one comes from Matt here. He says the following: at the end of the day, our own mistakes cost us more than the refs did. Thanks for all the content, Sanjit. Love the channel. I really appreciate that, man. This may be the best super chat of the day. It really may be. Again, if you guys want to be featured, super chats are the way to go. But Matt makes such a great point. You know, at the end of the day, the referees did not lose this game for the Raiders. The Raiders lost this game for the Raiders. You have a bunch of mental mistakes on the offensive line. You even have other plays, right? Like Brandon Faison getting beat on 3rd and 12 on a simple out route. You have other plays that Desmond Trufant can't stop Brandon Faison. You have these plays that, in my opinion, are the difference in this game, right? The Raiders could have stopped. The Bengals were out of field goal range. I think it was 3rd and 12, and Joe Burrow throws it to Jamar Chase, and Chase catches it on Trufant. And I'm not talking about the one that he got pushed, right? That was a missed penalty, in my opinion. But the one after that, right? Those type of plays, in my opinion, cost the Raiders the win, right? Cost the Raiders the victory. It had nothing to do with the referees, at least in my opinion. At the end of the day, the Raiders had every opportunity to win this game, and they just didn't, right? They didn't get it done. And you can say the offense didn't put up enough points, which would not be it wouldn't be incorrect, right? 19 points is not enough points to win. It's just not in today's NFL. 19 points probably ranks in the bottom 10 in terms of points per game. At the same time, the Bengals put up 26 points, but the Bengals also got three points for free from the Derek Carr fumble. So again, 20 or 23 points isn't that many points either, right? But again, you looked at John Simpson hold. That was probably the biggest play of the game because some of those other holds and stuff, the Raiders were able to make up. I think on that John Simpson hold, I think we had 3 holds just on that one penalty. I think those 3, the other 2 holds did not matter. That third hold is what mattered because we were at the 1-yard line. Had that hold not happened, right? So I appreciate the super chat, Matt. I really do. It's a great super chat, and you're 100% spot on. Slashing Mac, big shout out to you, man. You said thanks for the coverage this season, brother. I really appreciate that. I really don't know if I'm going to if I'm gonna post for the next couple of days, I may take a mental break. I may not. All right, truth be told, I may not. I love what I get to do, but we're not gonna have a lot of Raider news, right? But I still kind of want to talk about some various topics. I still want to do some film breakdowns. I think there's some things that the Raiders missed. Some people they blew me up on Twitter saying Derek Carr missed a wide open Deshaun Jackson on the play that he fumbled the ball, and I agree. Right, we saw the replay at halftime. I do agree that Derek Carr missed him, but Foster also lost, and DC felt the pressure. He knew he did not have the time. Now he should have held on to the ball, but that's a conversation for a different day. But I do want to talk about those type of things, right? I definitely want to talk about those, and I appreciate the comment. Again, if you guys are here right now, I'm going to be posting a lot of content still, film breakdowns, looking over some rookies. I have a second YouTube channel, if you guys didn't know, man. It's called The Football Scout, where I break down rookies and I talk about rookies. I do the all 22 breakdowns on that second channel. That channel is about to get going, man. I'm going to be posting so much content over the next couple of weeks. So be on the lookout for that as well. I appreciate the super chat. Antonio said, hey, Sanji, what did DC throw a short pass to Waller and they needed to get into the end zone? That was a bad play call. Let's talk about it, man. I think you're talking about the tipped pass. I believe that was on third down, or actually that may have been on second down, where DC threw the ball and it hit the Bengals guy in the helmet. I don't know how that happens. I really don't know, man. I don't know how a quarterback throws it and it hits a guy. It's different if a guy swats it, but it hit the guy in his helmet. So I'm not sure what happened there, but that was a big play because if Waller caught that, we're at like the 4 or 5 yard line. And I believe we would have gotten the first down, and I believe we had to settle for a field goal because of that. And don't quote me on that. Maybe that was the final drive. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch the game. The Raiders had every opportunity, man. They really did, but Derek Carr still had a pretty good game, right? So at the end of the day, in my opinion, at least, I think Derek Carr did enough for the Raiders to win. Obviously, we weren't able to get it done at the end of the game when it really mattered, right? When it really, really mattered, when Derek Carr really needed to be, as I think he's had 30 game-winning drives. Those don't matter. Like, let's be honest. Those 30 game-winning drives don't matter because none of them have been playoff games. Today was the playoff game. Today would have been the one that really mattered, or to me at least, right? It would have really mattered. And we didn't get it done at the end of the day, man. The Bengals were just a better team, especially on that last drive. Their safety, Bates, great football player, man. Made so many good plays. That linebacker that got that interception, he was in the perfect spot to make that interception. Thank you for the super chat, Antonio. I really appreciate it. The next super chat comes from Aunt Six Soldier. Big shout out to you, man. I really appreciate it. What do we do with Leatherwood? Are we keeping him at right guard, moving him to right tackle, or move on from him? How would you fix the O-line in the offseason? That's a great question, man. Let's discuss this a little bit. As you guys know, I'm a former offensive lineman, man. Played offensive line for 6 years. Played. I was actually a backup center, and I started I think 2 or 3 games as the center, but I pretty much played right guard as the starter the rest of my career. Right, so I'm an offensive line guy. If you guys watch my film breakdowns, you guys will know that my offensive line videos get much more in depth than some of my other videos, and that's just naturally because I know the position of offensive line. In my opinion, Alex Leatherwood does not look good. He just doesn't. Like, I can see like Andre James, right? Like, I watched him play, and I was one of the guys that predicted it. I said Andre James is gonna be the Raiders center one day. Like, I literally predicted that. I even asked Colton Miller before it was confirmed that Andre James is the Raiders center, before they moved on from Rodney Hudson. I asked Colton Miller, I said, Andre James looks like a good football player. And Colton told me that there's a chance that when Rodney Hudson's no longer here, that he's going to be the Raiders guy. And that's exactly what happened. Like, literally a month after I spoke to Colton, that's exactly what happened. But that's this year, right? We moved on from Andre James this year. I said this 3 years ago that Andre James looks like a good freaking football player. In fact, you guys can go back and watch the film study that I did when Andre James was a rookie. And I said, this guy's going to be a starter. With that being said, I don't see that in Alex Leatherwood. I literally just don't see it. Same thing with John Simpson. I think John Simpson is not it. And I saw that last year. John Simpson is not going to be a good player. The thing is right guard, left guard are the easiest positions on the offensive line. You don't have to make the calls. You don't have to anchor down like the tackles do. you literally have the easiest job. Half the time, there's not even a guy over you, right? You literally just have to block down or block out. And in my opinion, neither of our guards have it. I would say John Simpson is worse than Alex Leatherwood. Alex Leatherwood is still a rookie. He'll still develop next year, and we'll base it off of that. But the things I don't see from Alex Leatherwood is he doesn't process the game well. We saw multiple times today, right? If you guys just watch, guys are stunting, they're looping, they're doing all these things. And Alex Leatherwood's like just not seeing it. There was a play specifically where Andre James takes a guy, and then I'm sorry, Alex Leatherwood takes a guy, and another guy loops around, and Andre James is trying to get that guy to the loop. They should have switched. They should have passed it off, and they didn't do that, right? So those are the types of things that I think the Raiders are going to struggle with. Now, we invested a first-round pick with Leatherwood, so we're not moving on from him. That doesn't make sense. He's guaranteed money for the next 3 to 4 years. I think what the Raiders need to do, I'm fine with our right guard to left tackle. I think the Raiders need to get a really good right tackle. I'd say go out in free agency, find the best offense tackle, pay him whatever he wants, and start him at right tackle. Because when you have a really good right tackle, you have a really good left tackle, the rest of the offensive line really doesn't matter as long as they're experienced, as long as they're pretty good. You can get by, right? Your centers and guards don't matter as much. Really, you need a good right tackle and left tackle, and I'd start with the right tackle position and then just develop, man. Let's see where these guys can develop. Of course, I would probably draft the left guard. But at the worst case scenario, you still have Denzel Good, right? Denzel Good could easily be your starting left guard. Maybe he also starts at right tackle. Who knows, right? So I would definitely look at those guys, but you need to have backups in place. This year, we're like literally down to the last depth positions, right? So I think that kind of makes a big difference. But yeah, man, I really appreciate the super chat. I really do. Another thing that's kind of interesting is if you guys remember during the draft season, we talked about the fact that the Raiders need to take Christian Barmore. And I think that right there would have impacted our team so much more than taking Alex Leatherwood. I think having Christian Barmore would have allowed us to potentially win an extra game, would have allowed us to potentially do some more things and even be ranked better on the defense side of the ball. I don't know exactly how many sacks Barmore had. I think he may have had like plus 2 or 3 sacks, but he had many quarterback pressures, hits, hurries, all that good stuff. And I think the Raiders still struggle at the interior defensive line position. And again, I don't see it from Alex Leatherwood. But we'll obviously see what happens. Look for the Raiders to draft the defensive tackle as well, man. I think that could really make a big difference. Johnny Perez, thank you for the super chat. Said these field goals become that much more frustrating when you realize that Deshaun Jackson dropped the pass on 3rd down, and we hold on to Jacobs' run that gets to the 1st, and all of a sudden we're in 3rd and goal from the 17th. That's actually a really good point, man. Again, I'm not saying Derek Carr lost us this game because you can argue he really didn't. You can argue that the last drive he should have got it done. Sure, you can make that argument, but you look at Deshaun Jackson. I don't know if he would have scored a touchdown, but he would have had an opportunity to at least score had he caught the ball. I don't know if we would have scored when he got to the 1-yard line because I believe it would have been 3rd and 1. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it would have been 3rd and 1. So you would have had 1, potentially 2 more downs to score. No guarantees that you score, but at least you would have had the shot to score. That's 2 plays you could have potentially scored touchdowns on. Instead, you kicked field goals on both of those drives. So instead of scoring 14, you score 6. That could be the difference in the game, right? So I really appreciate the super chat. It makes way too much sense in my opinion. But the hope is that the Raiders get that fixed next year, right? That's going to be the hope that going into next year, these small little things, the Raiders don't make these mistakes. You have these drops and these mental mistakes and these holds and these false starts when you have a young football team, and that's what the Raiders are. They're a young roster. All right, like who's our oldest player on the offensive side of the ball? That's actually starting right now. Just on the top of my head, is it Derek? And Derek's like 30 years old. Maybe it's Darren Waller. It's probably between those 2 guys. We're young on the offensive side of the ball. I think pretty much every player mine is Derek and Darren Waller, and then Zay Jones, I guess, as well. But I believe everybody else is like 4th year or less, which is pretty crazy to think, right? So I think getting some veterans can definitely make a difference as well. Robert Taylor said Bill Musgrave as offensive coordinator or assistant head coach. I really don't know, man. You never know what's going to happen. Obviously, that's going to depend on who the coach is. John Gruden likes his guys. Jim Harbaugh is going to like his guys. Brian Flores is going to like his guys. We'll obviously see what happens. I appreciate the super chat. Daniel left a $5 super chat. He says, the Rod situation makes me so sad when I think about what could have been. So much potential. Thoughts on Carr being the next Brady for the Raiders? Derek Carr is not going to be the next Tom Brady. There's never going to be another Tom Brady, or at least if there will be a Tom Brady, it's going to happen one time in the next 30 years. And honestly, we'll realize who that guy is like towards the end of his career, right? Like Russell Wilson was on that Tom Brady trajectory, or he was in the beginning of this year, right? Because he went to 2 Super Bowls. He could have potentially won that second one. But those are the types of players I think are next Tom Brady. Derek Carr is 30 years old. Derek Carr has 5 to 8 years left in his career. And I don't think he's going to be Tom Brady with the Raiders, man. Our roster is we haven't shown that we can build a roster, right? I know we have a good roster right now, but can we keep this roster and can we continue to build on this roster? I agree with you though, man. That Henry Ruggs situation really ruined our season. I think the John Gruden situation ruined the season. If the Raiders have John Harbaugh, if the Raiders have John Gruden, are we winning 12 games this season? I think it was a real possibility. I don't think we lose to the Giants and the Washington football team if we had John Gruden. Would the Ruggs situation have happened if we had John Gruden? I don't know, right? And obviously, I know that's him making that decision, but I think having John Gruden would have really impacted this season for the Raiders in a more positive way, right? Thank you for the super chat. Cruise Control says, Sanjit, you bring some content this offseason. Needs to be entertained. I will be up the tiers for you and Raid. Keep me stimulated with info. I really appreciate that, man. Big shout out to you, Cruz. I really, really do appreciate that. If you guys aren't already members of this channel, man, become a member, man. It really supports the channel. It really allows me to see to be honest with you, it really allows me to see that, okay, I'm making YouTube videos this year or this month. This is how much I'm going to make from my member subscription. Can I get my bills paid? Like, can I continue doing this? Right now, I plan to continue doing this, right? And obviously, we'll see how the offseason kind of comes along. The offseason content really kind of slows down. The views slow down. But I really appreciate that, Cruz. I really appreciate the super chat and the fact that you're already a member. You guys can see that with the little sign next to the $4.99. A big shout out to you, man. Nintendo Nut said, I know I can be pretty negative on here, but thanks for the coverage, Sanjit. Much love, ride or die. I appreciate that, man. If you guys have opinions, you guys have your thoughts on this roster, it doesn't have to be the same opinion I have. Vice versa. I don't have to agree with what you may think. One of the things that happens is sometimes I'll say I don't believe in Derek Carr, or I don't believe in Tom Cable, or I don't believe in this, or this. And people take it to heart, man. You guys should see some of the comments I get on Twitter, on Instagram, in my DMs. People really think that you have to agree on every single situation, and that's not the case. We don't all have to agree all the time. We can all have our own opinion, and that's what makes sports so great, right? Everyone can have their own opinion. So I don't take it as you being negative. And I really appreciate super chat, man. I really do. And I appreciate the fact that you appreciate the coverage. I will always cover the Raiders, man. I'll be 78 years old and I'll still be going live making videos, man. So big shout out to all of you guys. Cuban Raider said, thank you for all you did this season, Sanji. Excited for this season. Looking forward to your videos. Have a great night, brother. I really appreciate that, man. If you guys are from the East Coast, especially, man, it's past 9 o'clock. Big shout out to you guys. And I think there's another game on today too. So if you guys are tuned in here as opposed to watching the next playoff game, I really appreciate that, man. It really does mean a lot. The next super chat comes from yours truly, 94. Do we have enough money to pay for a right tackle, Waller, and Carr, though? I think you can make it work. I really do. And I think you need to draft well, right? And what I mean by that is think about this for a second. Right now, the Raiders have Corey Littleton that's going to make $12 million next year. Corey Littleton was replaced with Divine Diablo, and that's a draft, right? And so for the next 4 years, you have Divine Diablo on a rookie contract, and you get rid of Corey Littleton. You look at some other guys that you did the same thing with. Maybe it's a safety, and you get Trayvon Merrick, so now you're locked in for the next 4 to 5 years. Nate Hobbs is a 5th-round pick. You're locked in for the next 4 years with the cheap contract of a rookie. Andre James, you extended him before he became what he has become, or what he's going to become potentially next year, right? Those are the types of things that allow you to pay a right tackle and Darren Waller and Derek Carr. John Gruden paid Darren Waller before anybody knew who Darren Waller really was. Before he took the league by storm, John Gruden had paid him. And those are the types of decisions that the Raiders have to continue to make to have success. I think we can go out and get a right tackle. Now, I would argue that the right tackle that you pay him $17 million if that's what it takes, right? Because I think there are certain positions that you have to pay for. And I think your offensive tackles have to, you have to pay for your offensive tackles. You could make the argument that a tight end is a position you maybe shouldn't pay for, right? You can make that argument. Either way, I really appreciate the super chat, man. I do think we'll have enough money, or at least you can make it work. And Mike Mayock has to make it work, right? I'm not going to do it, and I know you're not going to do it. It has to be Mike Mayock. Hopefully, he can get that done. Nick said the tuck rule game, the immaculator reception, and now the whistle game. That's a dead ball. I agree. I can't disagree with that. 100% cannot disagree with that. The thing is I'm sure the league will come out and make a statement. But what is a statement going to do for the Raiders? Do we win this game? Do they have to replay the down? It makes no difference, right? Are we going to rewind to that third down play or whatever and make them redo it and then start the game from there? A statement does not matter at this point, right? At the end of the day, the Raiders got screwed. At the end of the day, a penalty, or at the end of the day, a law, a rule that the NFL has in place was not followed by the officials. And that's an embarrassment. The referees should be ashamed. The referees should be embarrassed. In my opinion, whoever made the decision, one of the referees needs to be fired, man, because that kind of stuff right there impacts the rest of the game, right? And it can't happen, man. It definitely can't happen. Farrell from the East said, a great season for the Raiders. Need new coaches and more talent. Harbaugh, Pep Hamilton for OC, and Fangio for DC. The better team on today. I don't disagree with that, man. Let's be honest. The Cincinnati Bengals are a better team than the Raiders. They have a better coach than the Raiders. They have better offensive players than the Raiders. You can argue they have the better defense as well, right? Or at least, you can argue who the better defense is. But yeah, man, I totally agree with you. The Raiders need, in my opinion, bring in that new coach, bring in that new system. And if Derek Carr is the guy, make sure the system is going to fit him. Make sure make sure you do everything you can for him to have success, right? Because the last thing I would want is for Derek Carr to go to a different team, Washington or whoever it may be, and go and win them a Super Bowl. Where he can do that for the Raiders, right? So I appreciate the super chat. Molly Moss said, appreciate your content. I appreciate you, man. I really do. You've been with me this entire season. Big shout out to you. I really, really, really appreciate it. Jabril Williams said, I think we should trade Carr for picks and allow him to find success somewhere else. He's endured enough with us. And I wouldn't be opposed to that. Like, I really wouldn't be. Derek Carr has given the Raiders so much of his career. He's given us so much over these past 8 years. And if the Raiders moved on from Derek Carr, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That doesn't mean Derek Carr necessarily failed. And it doesn't mean that the Raiders, look at Derek Carr's not a good player, or that I look at it or we look at it as Derek Carr's not a good player. Sometimes a rebuild helps everybody. Sometimes a new quarterback could help everybody, right? For example, let's say the Raiders had Joe Burrow, right? Is Joe Burrow better than Derek Carr? I don't know, but I know Joe Burrow isn't going to cost the Raiders $40 million next year. Joe Burrow would cost the Raiders $6, $7, $8 million, whatever he's making. What about Patrick Mahomes, right? If the Raiders had Patrick Mahomes, no doubt in my mind, Patrick Mahomes is better than Derek Carr. Would the Raiders win more? Absolutely, right? Absolutely, the Raiders would win more. But the thing is, are the Raiders going to get that guy, right? And I think that's kind of what you have to think about. Ultimately, I think the Raiders should keep Derek Carr. I really do think the Raiders going into next season should have Derek Carr on this roster. Unless they decide that, hey, we'll rather go with Marcus Mariota and go into next season with him and let's trade Derek Carr for picks. I wouldn't be opposed to that either, right? Like, I'm just being honest with you guys. I think either one of those two guys could potentially win with the Raiders. Like, we still made it into playoffs with all this stuff going against the Raiders. But I want to see what the Raiders can do next year, man. I'm tired, man, so I'm going to end the stream here. But before I leave, I want to wrap this up with some final thoughts. First and foremost, if you guys could hit that thumbs up button, I would really, really appreciate that, because it really does help this video be reached to other people. But more so than that, If you guys are not subscribed, or if you guys are already subscribed, hit that notification bell, because I'm still going to be posting videos every single day, or at least multiple times throughout the week. I will also have film videos of not only the Raiders players, but guys that I think the Raiders should potentially draft, right? Film breakdowns of some college prospects that I think could fit the Raider system, and I'll break down how I think they can kind of fit the Raider system. I'm going to still be doing all that content on this channel. I will also be going live, right? I plan to go live. I plan to continue going live and continue to talk Raiders football probably once a week. So definitely be tuned into all of that good stuff. I know the Raider season's over, but we're still Raider fans, right? That's never going to stop. So big shout out to all of you guys. Big shout out to all the Raiders players, teammates, all the guys that kind of got it done this year. I'm pumped up to kind of see what the future holds for the Raiders. I'm pumped up to kind of hear some of the news that's going to come out. Who's the Raiders' next GM? Who's their coach? Who's their quarterback? Who's their right tackle? Their center? Their running back? I'm excited for all this stuff, man. And you guys should be too. The Raiders' future is really bright. Hope you guys all have a great weekend, or the rest of your weekend. Have a great week. Represent the Raiders brand. Still a successful season. First playoff game since 2016. Before that, many years before that, right? So big shout out to all of you guys, and I will see you guys next time.